Welcome back to Celebrity Radio. It's Alex Belfield at a brand new production for me that has taken the world by storm. The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime is here at the Gieldgud Theatre in London. It's also on Broadway and on tour as well. And a lady who stole the show, well, secondly stole the show really, is Emily Joyce, who I've just enjoyed. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Well, coming to a matinee in the West End is never my favourite thing because there's normally a ton of kids who want to talk. Not in this show. They were so captivated, I didn't hear a peep from anyone.
I think the first 20 minutes can be quite challenging for them. I think that's true of any show, actually. But I think the first 20 minutes you've got a lot of catching up to do. You've got to work out how Christopher's mind works. And then suddenly, all the bells and whistles of the production come alive. And they do tend to get quite gripped after that. All the sweet papers stop rustling and the whispering to their mates. Do you know what the worst thing is, actually, is teachers shushing. Laughter we can deal with, sweets, fizzy drinks being opened, we're kind of used to that, but shushing is actually quite disruptive.
Almost competitive, isn't it? So let's get through this then. Yeah. What is it to start with? It's a quite mouthy title that doesn't really tell you a lot about the play. So let's do that firstly. People want to know, what is it?
It's written by the rather wonderful Simon Stevens, taken from the beautiful book that Mark Haddon wrote umpty-tump years ago now, actually. I read it when it first came out, and I fear it may be slightly longer ago than I would like to believe. People have differing views on what it's about. Some people think it's, about this maths boy, Christopher, who is Asperger's, and he's an extremely bright boy. Simon Stevens describes his mind as being balletic, which I think is a wonderful way of describing it. And he has a very particular way of seeing the world, which is very honest, but not entirely polite. It's also, though, the play is also about relationships, lies, deception, families, truth, and also Christopher goes on a detective journey, to find out who killed Wellington, who is a dog that we see in the very first scene, has been killed quite violently, quite shockingly. And after a little while, Christopher discovers that there is another mystery to be solved during the play, and he has to go on an epic and very frightening journey to try and find the answers.
What's interesting about this play, I've got a friend who's a doctor in autism. She's written a book called Loving Mr. Spock, which is about Asperger's syndrome. And the way she saw it in a relationship with a man who had Asperger's was that you have to be very literal. You can't use euphemisms. You have to be very specific with these people. And I think some people think autism's about being stupid or thick. In fact, it's the complete opposite. And that's what this play explores, is where that genius can be best used.
Yeah, absolutely. Although one has to point out that not all people who have autism have that genius mind. The world can be an extremely confusing place to somebody that doesn't understand it, and there are bits in the play where Christopher talks about metaphors, and we do use them all the time. It was raining cats and dogs. I mean, if you actually thought it was raining cats and dogs, literally thought it was raining cats and dogs, how terrifying would that be? There's another moment when someone says, you'll catch your death out here. How alarming. And I think that's a really beautiful exploration of language, and that's on a very simple level, that is how his mind works. But the autistic spectrum is huge, and we did a lot of research about this when we were rehearsing the play, and it goes from somebody who's mildly dyslexic is somewhere on that spectrum because the mind works in a very particular way, to somebody that has a brilliant mind, and people might remember Rain Man. There was another film, wasn't there, that someone did something of a brilliant, beautiful mind. What was that film? Yeah. You're going to come up with it and then edit that in, aren't you?
Make me sound really clever. What's also interesting about the play, it sort of follows the Asperger's line with the visuals in terms of the hypersensitive stuff that it throws at you. And it is probably one of the cleverest, most sophisticated sets I've ever seen. And also one of the most complicated in terms of what the lead guy has to do in his steps and the technology and bringing that together with the music and the acting. I mean, you guys are geniuses. This is a really clever play.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to take too much of that genius credit personally. I think the whole production is quite extraordinary, and it really does blow people away. I think, the set, when you first look at it, is this rather simple black box, but it's got the graph lines on it, it's all on graph paper, and the way that we move, Frantic Assembly, who did all the movement with us and choreographed it, we did 6 weeks of boot camp to get ourselves fit enough to do the play, and the way that we all move is very precise. The way that people say the script is all very precise, because it's an insight into the way Christopher's mind works, which is quite difficult to achieve, I have to say. But I would also say that that you start off with the most beautiful, delicate story. At times it's almost like a love story, and you take this beautiful story, and then you throw the bells and whistles at it. The lighting, the sound, the set, the video, and the movement, and it becomes something, I think, really quite extraordinary.
As a bit of a geek, I sit there wondering how many things could go wrong. I mean, there's so many opening of drawers and pulling things out, and I don't want to give this play away because you've really got to come and see it and enjoy it in full. But, I mean, there's a lot of little technicalities through every second that if one went wrong, it would then affect the next bit and the next bit, and it could fall like a deck of cards, couldn't it?
Yeah, it could. And, things do go wrong. Because of the way that we were rehearsed, which was with military precision, we sort of know how to get each other out, and also we work very, very closely as a team. And I think the way that Frantic Assembly rehearsed and the way that the play was also rehearsed with us, we learnt to work together physically almost before we learnt to work together emotionally and mentally. So the physical trust between the company is enormous, and we know that we can get each other out of scrapes. So, I mean, it happens very rarely that a bit of prop might not be where you expected it to be, or a torch might not work or something. But it does happen, and then there are contingency plans. Of course, you only put those plans in once it's gone wrong, and you didn't have a contingency plan. But, they do go wrong. But there's also, there are blackouts that are absolute blackouts, which is quite difficult to work with sometimes, and sometimes that doesn't work.
On top of the scenery, the lighting, the incredible choreography, the stunning acting, it's bloody funny. We should really make that clear, because it sounds like it's quite serious. The death of a dog and a guy who's autistic and all of this is very serious, but it's hysterical. There are some laugh out loud moments for all ages as well. Oh
yeah, completely. And I think and it's really wonderful the way different audiences approach it, and we do take a lot from the audiences. And some people will find things very funny, and some people won't. Some people get quite concerned that we might be laughing at autism, and that we're absolutely not laughing at autism. I think the laughter comes from the truth and the recognition that people get as they get to know Christopher, and some of the theatrical devices that are there that become in jokes with our audience, not amongst ourselves, with the audience.
You've had such an interesting career. It's fascinating. I mean, when I look at what you've done, you've basically done everything. And as an actress, I wonder how fulfilling this is, because it ticks all the boxes, doesn't it? I mean, whether it's Midsummer Murders you've done on the TV or Casualty, I mean, you can do that again if you get it wrong. In this, I mean, every step counts. Is it for you really thrilling and creatively fulfilling?
It is, actually, I have to say. It really is. I mean, I'm one of those actors that just, I love working. I'm extremely lucky to do a job that I absolutely love. But this is a challenge every time you do it. This is the most challenging, physically and emotionally, that combination that I think I've ever had to do. And it is really exciting to play every single day. I mean, you know, when we're in quite a long run here, and I have to say there isn't one show that you think, can't really be bothered, I'd rather be eating fish and chips. There just isn't.
And I guess the greatest compliment I could pay you is there is no phoning it in with this show, because you can't. It would fall apart, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it really would. And yeah, it would completely. And you have to be absolutely on it. You have to be really, really focused. You know, there's no... We're all exhausted after a show, mentally and physically. And, you know, it is pretty much straight home to bed.
Well, and good for you, because you need to come and do it again tomorrow. I'm glad that this ends happy. There was a moment when I thought, oh no, you're not going to leave me where all the cast are dead and I'm the lucky one to be alive. Do you know what I mean? And it doesn't leave you like that. And it is a story that starts dark. It is difficult sometimes to communicate with someone who's frustrated, who's got Asperger's, and it sort of delves into that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And I think that's Nick Tennant and I, we play the parents, met up with some really wonderful parents of an autistic boy who, and we were very frank with them, and I asked them some rather nasty questions, I suppose, like, how on earth do you love him? You know, when you're not getting love back in a conventional way. And she rather, you know, the mum that we talked to rather beautifully said, well, you do, actually, but you have to know the signs that you're looking for, because, you know, people with autism can't show their emotions in a conventional way. But, you know, if, for example, in the play, if Christopher says, I'm tired, what he means is, I'm absolutely exhausted, I'm scared, and I'm really relieved to be here. And, you know, mum has to know that. I mean, I think the most touching part of the whole play is the frustrations that parents have. You know, whether you've got an autistic child or not, it's really tough to be a parent. But you just love your child, and there is, you know, that is the bottom line, really.
And this is about love. This is a play about love. It's the old story. It is magnificent. I'm hugely impressed by it and blown away. I wish I'd have seen it sooner. I don't know how I've missed this so far, but it's worth waiting for. And to see something that's different and new and doesn't have ABBA songs in it is really nice. And it is...
Put some in.
Yeah, why don't you try a bit of Dancing Queen tomorrow? But I mean, it is exceptional. It's not very often you walk in a theatre and something is so different. It is completely refreshing, and I think it's testament to the reason it has travelled to Broadway and stayed on here in the West End.
Yeah, I have nothing else to add to that. I think, yes, it does.
I give you 5 stars. Not that it's worth anything, it's my opinion. This is really worth seeing. The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime is on at the Gieldgud Theatre in the West End. You can see it on Broadway and on tour throughout the UK. Emily Joyce, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.